Come on.
All right, good morning, everyone. Please take your seats. We'll get started here for the annual DX Forum. Everyone take your seats. All right, good morning. I'd like to introduce our illustrious DX Forum panel. Most of you know me, Paul N6PSE. To my right here is Brian Moran, N9ADG. Brian is a past editor of the ARRL contest update, and he's been a part of the VK9MA, Tango 88 Whiskey Alpha, Hotel 44 Whiskey Alpha D expeditions. He also provided a lot of remote hands support for the H40 WA team, and he's also one of the developers of WSJT-X software. To his right is Otis, November Papa for Germany, and let's see what I did with his bio. I got too much stuff in my hands.
Senior's kindly of us.
Yeah.
You can make something up.
Dr. Jose Otis Vicens is a practicing orthodontist in Puerto Rico. He's a life member of the American Radio Relay League. He's founding chairman of the ARRL Puerto Rico State Convention and currently serves as the president of IDXC. He's also part of the K3LR Superstation contest team, and he's participated in many radio events throughout the Caribbean, South America, Eastern Island, United Arab Emirates, and he went on the 3Y0J, the expedition to Uve. Otis was also a referee in Italy for the WRTC 2022. To Otis's right is Al Rovner. He was first licensed in 1971 in high school as WA2 TMP in South Jersey. He received his K7AR call in 1996. Al is a very active DXer and #1 on the honor roll. He's also an active DXpeditioner and has participated in 28 expeditions in the last 37 years. Over here to my right is Steve, W1SRD. Steve's an avid DXpeditioner. He was the co-organizer of the Tango X-Ray 5 Sierra expedition to Clipperton Island in January 2024. His previous expeditions include TX5N Austral Islands, VP8PJ South Orkney Islands, VP6D Ducie, VK9LX Lord Howe, TX3X Chesterfield Island, and PJ4D and Bonaire. He enjoys station building and contesting in all modes. He participates in DX Marathon, chasing slots for challenge and working towards top 10 honor roll with 337 confirmed. He's a busy guy. He's hoping to see Glorioso and FT5X on the air soon. Sometime in the WPX, he can be heard signing AG1RL, borrowing his very supportive XYL's call. That's Doris, K0 Bravo Echo Echo, who's here in the front. Hi, Doris. And lastly, we have Lucas, W6AER. And what did I do with his bio? Hold on.
He's a great guy.
Yeah. Lucas has been heavily involved in many aspects of DXing. He's active from 160 to 10 gigahertz, though most of the time he's been on HFDX and satellite DX chasing. He loves all mode, but mostly operates about 80% on digital. He enjoys exploring 630 meters and the 2200 meter bands at night during the winter months. He loves building and experimenting with antennas from HF to microwave, as well as casually contesting. Lucas has been working in the information technology field for the past 3 decades, and I know he's dreaming of retiring and building a mega station soon. And lastly, when he's not operating and not sleeping, he's writing books, and he's the author of this very excellent book that's available at DX Engineering called Ham Radio DX, a complete guide, how to go from karaoke to DXCC rockstar. And you can get this on DX Engineering. It's really a great book. I highly recommend it. I learned some stuff. Okay, so we're going to get started here. Unfortunately, we only have one microphone, so we've got one arm tied behind our back here. We're going to take questions from the audience. If you have a question, raise your hand. If we can't hear you, I'll run the mic out to you, and then I'll run it back to these guys to answer your questions. If there's a lull in questions from the audience, I have some real hot ones here that were emailed to me, and we'll get into those. We don't want to beat too many dead horses or go down the rabbit holes too much, but let's try to solve some problems and have a fun, enjoyable hour. So with that, any questions? Who wants to go first from the audience? Who'd like to ask the panel a question? Anyone? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Mike W7VO. The DXAC is currently looking at whether or not Jarvis should be a new DXCC entity removed from Palmyra. I'd be curious what the panel thinks about the idea of doing that.
Anyone on the panel like to touch that? Okay, the question was the DXAC, which I'm a Mountain Pacific Division representative on the DXAC, so I can chime in on that too. The question is, should Jarvis Island be separated from Palmyra and become a new entity unto itself? Anyone like to discuss that? Okay, well I can tell you, being on the DXAC, the question has come up several times. Members of the DXAC have done an exhaustive review and analysis of how Jarvis became an entity, what's the parent of the entity. It's been very thoroughly researched. Actually, a member of the DXAC going to the league and actually reviewing old files and documents. There was a determination some months ago that it would not be a separate entity from Palmyra. There is a new request with new information to review it, and the DXAC has reopened the process of reviewing Jarvis as to whether it should be a separate entity. And it's too early to say which way it's going to go. But I can tell you that the DXAC takes these requests very, very seriously. They're doing an exhaustive research on how it was created and a review of all the rules, past, present, contemporary, and I'm confident they'll make the right decision, and I'm just one voice. But nothing's been decided yet. Okay, next question. That was a good question. Thank you. Next question? Anyone? Okay, we're going to go to the list. Okay, here's a hot one. Here is a hot one. So, the question is, emailed here, says, newer hams have little chance of making it on honor roll. That's true. Because of the lack of amateur radio operation in many entities. Is there something that could be created to give the newbies a shot at honor roll? Perhaps the current 331 entities could be reduced to a lower number for hams, say first licensed 10 years prior to his or her DXCC honor roll submission date. And as an example, if I were first licensed in 2014, then I would qualify for honor roll, say, with 301 entities. Does anyone like to tackle this question? Al?
I think this has been brought up before as far as moving countries to an inactive status. So if North Korea were moved to an inactive status, that would probably mean a lot of people would now qualify for the #1 honor roll. Is that a good idea? Some would say yes, some would say no. But I think it's certainly worth considering, and I know it was brought up here last year, and I don't think anything has moved forward or changed since last year. But I think that's a good idea, and I would support it.
Okay. Anyone else like to chime in on that? Steve?
The only thing I'm going to add to it is, I think it's a pretty decent idea too, for a number of reasons. K5GS and I have done some pretty detailed analysis on likely DXCCs that could be activated for various reasons or not, including permits, government action, and so on and so forth. You think of a half dozen reasons of how you categorize it. But the one thing I would like to say is if we did implement an inactive program, I don't think that would disincent de-expedition teams from trying to get on those locations. In other words, that's the important part to me, is just because it gets flagged inactive, does that mean we quit trying? And the answer would be no. It's just would be an arbitrary, for instance, arbitrary category that says it's been inactive for 15 years, therefore we're going to put it in this category, nobody's been there. But that certainly wouldn't stop good teams from trying to get there. And that's to me the key, is it's not throwing in the towel on these things in my opinion, it's just saying, for now, the likelihood is so low that we don't think anybody's going to get there without extraordinary circumstances.
And I fully agree. So it would help, but also don't forget about time. Give it time. You might be surprised. Somebody might show up in D5, like they have a couple of years ago. That's all I have.
Thank you, guys. And I just want to say I concur with them. I think it's really important to keep the DXCC program contemporary, to keep an open mind and have it evolve. I think what's a real key development, I understand that Bob Nauman has left his role at the league, and I hope that his replacement is somebody who really understands the DXCC program like Bill Moore did or Wayne Mills, and this question can be lobbied with that replacement. I think just about anything is possible. Steve, N6SJ.
I thought the question I thought I heard was for newer hams, could you reduce honor roll threshold from 330 down to 300? I thought that's what your email was.
Something along those lines.
So that's not related to, taking entities off the list.
The net effect, I think, is the same.
You think it's the same? Okay.
Yeah.
And we're not taking, and again, keyword is not taking it off the list. Keyword is making it active. They're still on the list.
The key point of the inactive concepts, we're not taking anything off the list. We're merely changing its status from active to inactive, and that would change the total count. But if it were to ever be reactivated, it would be right back in the number. So we're not taking any entities out. We're not lowering thresholds of achievement. We're varying it based on the conditions we're actually seeing in the real world today, which we're fully recognizing change year to year, month to month, day to day. Somebody could show up at P5 tomorrow with a good license. Who knows?
You all still aren't answering the question. 300? We're not talking about P5.
Well, let's say we inactivate 20. What's the new number?
I'm not talking about reactivating. Give a newbie a chance to get on some status and say 300.
That would be doing the same thing. If we inactivated 20, that would make the new number for the newbie 310. It's the same. It is exactly the same. As opposed to, unless you wanted to create different categories of achievement within a DXCC program. So I think there's two completely separate questions. Managing a current list and what are the barriers on that current list, or you create separate categories. Like we have a contest, we have 3 wires and a vertical, or we have 12 hours. You can do that as well. But historically, the program hasn't wanted to do that. And I don't know enough about the history to comment on that.
Yeah, or QRP.
Or like QRP is a separate word, for example.
Yeah, I think what Steve is saying is changing the classification of entity to inactive sort of accomplishes the same thing.
Okay. It was my email and my intention. It had nothing to do with deleting or restoring. It had to do with strictly giving the newbies an opportunity, because of the lack of activity among many of the entities, to give them the opportunity to make it to honor roll with a lower number. Let's assume they've been a ham less than 10 years. Instead of requiring 331, maybe they only require 300 or some other number, and have a sliding scale to give the new people a chance.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, Tony Casey.
Yeah, thank you. Playing into the same subject, as my country total grows, I began to try to become more familiar with the requirements for honor roll. And if I'm reading it correctly, and I may be mistaken because I've done it many times, I'm reading that deleted countries don't count. What doesn't make sense to me is when I began my march for honor roll, those countries counted. Now you've taken them away from me, why? They count on your total anyway, no matter what, whether they're deleted or not. But in the long run, now I have to do 3 more countries than I thought I had before. So I'm wondering what the rationale of that is.
I don't think anybody wants to take any countries away from that you've worked. Just the status would change. Countries would be inactive. I think that's sort of the compromise to the question.
Thanks, Paul. Sorry about the gravelly voice, but allergies are killing me. I talked to Wayne Mills about 2 or 3 years ago on this very subject, and the suggestion might be eliminate number 1 on the roll. That way, there is no number 1 on the roll, and basically, there wouldn't be if the proposal, as Steve pointed out, would be enacted. You drop 20 countries, and regarding the information about taking away countries, when a country is deleted, it is not removed. You still have your total. At the end of the year, you go to your totals. Your totals don't change. You still have X amount of countries. If you work 360, you still got 360.
Okay, Otis, and then over here. You're next.
I want to comment on something to add. You know, I'm fairly new compared to the people who are sitting next to. So I know I will never make it to 340. I mean, I heard people working on 350. You know, so it's a personal achievement. I just want to throw out that for perspective. You know, for me, on a roll, it's a personal thing. If I ever get to it or not, for other people, who are more hardcore DXers and things, might need another thing. But it's just don't lose track of the perspective and reality. And I think, as we move forward, we have to evolve and we have to continue to make it a way so that people feel challenged that they can achieve their goals. But it's up to them to actually decide to pursue that or not. So it's not something that I feel confident in probably.
No.
All due respect, Dick, I've been in your shack and I've seen your #1 DX plaque and you're very proud of it. I've got one more country, Glorioso. I was off last time they were on. I'm waiting for that last one to have that proud #1 DX plaque. And I'm hoping that none of this deleted countries or furloughed countries will not affect that #1 DX. That's the lofty goal for DXers, is to get that wonderful plaque on the wall that says you worked them all. Thank you.
I think you're always going to have the controversy between the guys who only handle that stuff and have been rewarded with a status compared to the guys who have gotten there. And it looks pretty dim for getting there. I think they would be much better off creating a new category to recognize guys like me who aren't in the article, but who've made substantial amounts of achievement in DX. I don't know what the rules were if I were making them. I'd make it 5 countries less than I have. But somebody who looks at the whole thing might well find a number. These sliding things, letting somebody get a status that a guy worked decades for and having it lowered because he's younger. You're just going to get people unhappy with a standard like that.
Like me, don't take it away.
Don't take it away. You should make it honorable. You should create something new.
You're going to find me.
Okay, anyone else before we move on to the next question? Oh, John, K6YP, go ahead.
It seems to me that, and a gentleman already mentioned this point, that who are you competing with when you're working to achieve honor roll? You're competing with one person and one person only, and that's yourself. Okay, it's not a thing, how many countries do I have, and that will be a certain level of honor roll, and this will be a certain level of honor roll. Hey, you're competing against yourself, and what you want to achieve is your own thing to call, and I wouldn't change a thing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to the next question. And this next question comes from John, K6YP. He says, Paul, how do we get Syria, YK, or Turkmenistan on the air soon? Well, I can answer that I went to Syria in August of this year, or last year. I consulted with Omar Shabzig, YK1AO, and he gave me a little bit of insight. And as soon as an American could get a visa, I was in there. I made presentations with the Ministry of Tourism and the Ministry of Communications in their building, the same building you operated from many years ago, Rusty. And if the decision was solely with the Ministry of Tourism and the Ministry of Communication, it would happen. Probably wouldn't appear to be an American expedition. I've actually approached a European group that I've done other de-expeditions with, and it would be a European-led, European-centric operation with a few Americans. The problem in Syria right now is the military controls all movement, all import, all export. They've also got a little problem with the Damascus airport, and their runways keep getting bombed. So it's very challenging to come into Syria, and there's checkpoints literally every road, every mile has an 18-year-old ragtag army kid there who has no authority. Yeah, he's got an AK-47 and a bullet, and he basically his authority is so limited that as long as the military, my feeling is as long as the military is in control, it's not going to happen in Syria. If peace comes to that region, things settle down, possibly.
What about the Russian military? Don't they have a navy?
I went to Latakia, which is a coastal seaside resort. There's a very large Russian naval base there. The very active ships and helicopters in and out. I think Russians probably have more of an advantage to activate in Syria. Maybe if DIMA, RE9USU, or somebody tried, they might have better success.
If you had the right contacts.
Yeah, the trouble is getting the contacts in the military. You know, you would need an Arabic interpreter, you know, right off the get-go. It's complicated. Turkmenistan, I can tell you, I have some European friends who have been to Turkmenistan. It's a weird country. It's a very nice, peaceful place, very prosperous country. They have unlimited natural gas reserves. They have great wealth. They don't need anything. They tolerate tourists, but their current president is sort of a dictator. He controls all media and all communication in and out of the country. And basically my friends there who have been poking at Turkmenistan over the years say it's not going to happen until there's a regime change. So that's what I have on Turkmenistan. Does that answer your question, John?
Yeah.
Anybody want to chime in on that question?
Take it off the list.
Very good. Get inactive, maybe.
I wish there was a Socotra Island one could go to.
Yeah, that's pretty handy for Yemen. Okay, let's go to a new question. Any new questions from the audience? Anyone? Okay, we'll go to an email question here.
What's happening with Beauvais?
What's happening with Beauvais? Yeah, you know that one, if you watch DX World every day, there's a new wrinkle with Beauvais. I don't know if anyone's seen the latest, but apparently on the 3y0k.com website, it says they're suspending their fundraising and kind of reevaluating their plans. What does that mean? I don't know. I mean, It's not a good sign, that's for sure. If you're trying to raise, $750,000 to go somewhere and get a boat, that's not a good sign. Is it canceled? I don't know. I don't want to put words in their mouth. Question over here?
Yeah, Glorioso. I'm saying something on the panel is correctly. I mean, in December they were on, then they were supposed to be on last month, and there's a lot going on between Madagascar and the French. The French president went and visited Madagascar. I'm wondering if the French are ready to give up Glorioso. No.
Not that we've heard.
Any update on when that gentleman that was going to go activate in December and then last month?
I can't remember the last one I read, but they're still there. They have not called it. It's, I was going to Google it real quick, but
yeah, DX World has been following it really, really close. I think it's in May, I believe. And DX World had some posts where they're now going to do some 6 meters and they're going to do 160. None of which that really helps us, but they're kind of evolving their toolkit there. But one guy, how much can he do? And then if he's on 6 meters, he's certainly not on 20 meters working us. So, oh well, it is what it is.
One guy's one more than zero. It's true.
Any more questions? Yes, sir. We'll bring the mic to you. It's the only exercise I did.
You're doing a great job. Jim, N6KC. I pursue, as I'm sure many people in this room do, the DXCC challenge, and I've gotten to the 2,000 button, and I'm working my way up to the 2,500 button. It's a steep road. I was wondering if the league might, I guess this would come as not as a question, but as a suggestion, if the league might create interim awards for 2,100, 2,200, 23, 24. You could use the same award plaque, you just get little bitty stick on the value or something. So that's my suggestion. I was curious what the feeling of the general group would be to interim steps in that award. Anybody think that's a good idea? Thank you for your support. Thank you very much.
Okay. Another question?
Can I answer that question?
You can.
Hi, Mike, what is going to be who asked a question about that? You know who your DXAC rep is? Look at QST and find out who your DXAC rep is, and then give them that information. That will then come out. They will go through and it'll blend it with the PSC, which I chaired for a few years, and it can be taken into consideration. But work with your DXAC rep. Go on the ARRL website, find out who your rep is, contact him, and they can happen with enough support.
Mike, there seem to be plenty of new people, or people that aren't. There seem to be plenty of folks in the room that don't know all the intricacies about how the changes to the DXCC program occur. Maybe you could spend 3 minutes just outlining how the DXAC feeds into the next committee and so on and so forth, and how it all changes.
If you'd like.
I think that might be illustrative.
Okay, the DXAC is the DX Advisory Committee, and they're a committee made up of 1 member per division, selected by the division director, and they are considered to be the subject matter expert when it comes to DX expeditions and DX things that are related to the DX program. And everybody in this room, if you're ARRL member, you've got a DXAC rep. If you don't know who that is, go on the QS or go on to look at the ARRL website, look up DXAC and find out who your rep is and contact them. I was chair of the Program and Services Committee for the last 3 years until I got kicked upstairs. But the overriding thing that happens is the DXAC will take a recommendation and they'll talk among the 15 members, of which Paul's a member of that, right? Or you're a member of that, right? That committee, and there are 15 individual guys. They will chew it up, and come up with a final recommendation. That recommendation will then go to the Program and Services Committee as a recommendation, and we can either take it or accept it. One of the criteria that I always had as chair of the PSC is I want them to bring me consensuses. You guys all agree on it, then we'll take it, basically it'll just be a pass through the PSC because you guys all agree that the subject matter expert that that's what we need to do. So if you have something you feel strongly about, contact your DXAC rep, go on the website, go over to the ARRL booth, and they can probably, Bart in here, they can probably look up and find out who that DXAC rep is. And it's the same thing with the contest side. You guys will be hearing from the contest people here in another hour or so. It's the same thing with the contest side too. There's a CAC that does the same thing. There's the chair of it standing right back there, Craig Thompson. So if you have any questions, contact us over at the ARRL booth. Be glad to help you guys. So thank you.
That was a great answer. Thank you.
Just quickly, Paul, the DXAC representative for the Southwestern Division, which is Southern California and Arizona, is right here. John Schroeder, Norway, 6, Quebec, Quebec. So he's back.
Thank you, Nick.
I'm gonna go hide now.
Okay, question back here. Let's see. I see two hands.
Good exercise.
Yes, you commented on an email a few months ago that you thought that CE0X might be activated. I was wondering if you have any updates on that.
Does anyone have any updates on CE0X? I don't.
We're close by. Yeah.
I mean, I know there's some guys working on it. There's guys on the top 40 entities. There's multiple groups poking on all of those all the time, relentless. They never give up, but they're rare for a reason. Okay, let's go to an email question. With the event of FT modes, RTTY operation for the DXpeditions has almost disappeared. How do we get the DXpeditions to bring back that mode so we can have some fun with it? Anybody want to tackle that? Well, I'll say, I just was on 2 DXpeditions, one here in January and February, and we did a little RIDI, I believe, from Clipperton, but we didn't do any from Tomoto. We only had 4 rigs. We had trouble with stuff breaking. Thank you, Brian, for helping us fix things remotely. We had started, so he was remoting in and helping us fix that. You know, FT8 Fox and Hound is so elegant compared to the slugfest of RIDI, and to be able to do 5 streams and make over 300 cues an hour is just, you know, from a DXpeditioner standpoint, we feel if we don't make 50,000 Q subs, we've dropped the ball. If we make 60,000 Q subs, we're feeling better. If we make 70,000, hey, this is good, you know, we're on a roll. And RIDI is just so slow and so cumbersome. I think it's served its purpose for its time. It's still used for contesting and other things. I say this here looking at Edmunds. But it's just much slower for a DXpedition. And if you're really trying to maintain rate, and if you've ever operated Fox and Hound, you have various settings. You can set it up for like signal to noise ratio, so you can work the strongest stations. You can look at the whole list as decoding and cherry pick who you want. I did that a lot on Tomoto. I would work 5 J8s, then 5 North American, and 5 Europeans, and I just was trying to be very fair. So it was a lot of cherry picking. You can't do that with RIDI. I mean, your brain can do it, but you know you have to decode them and then click. It's just a whole different game. So I think FT modes, and Brian probably knows better than anybody what's coming around the corner with FT modes, but it's just so much more productive from a DXpedition standpoint. You want to add anything, Brian?
I like RIDI just as much as the next guy. It's hard to get that oil smell out of the computer, but in fact, our club call, we have K7AR, which we use in Roundup every January. You know, there's a lot of factors that go into whether a mode is successful or not. One of which is, say, for contesting, where it's still being used, I would say the most. You know, we could do 100 BODs, or sorry, BATRG does 75 BOD RIDI, and if you want a thrill, That thing, if you do that, you're going to be busy all weekend long, or I think it's only 4 hours for that contest. But I would suggest folks to take a look at some of those alternatives. But there are a bunch of constraints when you're on a de-expedition. Paul, you correctly mentioned the expectation on the part of the audience, which is you folks, to have a lot of QSOs. The time spent making one RIDI contact might be an opportunity cost, a high opportunity cost, for someone to get an FT8 contact into the log, maybe their all-time new one, maybe that young DXer that is trying to reach that unobtainably high number to make honor roll. Or, CW contacts, they pretty much rock as far as rates go. And phone contacts, a good phone operator can do 300 or more in an hour in good conditions in a cooperative pile. So if you just don't have the rate, you can see the calculus that's used to make the decision on a de-expedition to choose the various modes. Same reason why you don't see a lot of EME. It takes a while to make an EME contact. Some de-expeditions do it and find it in their interest to do so. But it's kind of the same thing. You can say that about almost any mode.
Brian, do you think there will be an evolution of WSJT-X maybe at some point, like we can do Fox and Hound with FT4?
This does come up. I'm on the development team, and we talk about how to improve WSJT-X for contest use, for DX use, and I've kind of everyone on the team has their kind of the different portions that they work on. The question really involves how do we improve the WSJT-X suite, if you will, so that it's better for these particular purposes. Could you use FT4 in like a Foxhound mode? Potentially. There's a shorter cycle time on the QSOs. The signal-noise ratio is a little bit less desirable than you have with FT8. Today, everyone seems to enjoy making lots of contacts using FT8 mode in Foxhound, where if you know how it works, there's up to 5 contacts that can be simultaneously in play. I think what you're going to see sooner than FT4 being used in Foxhound mode is maybe a different way for the Fox to be heard better. The Fox is the DX in this kind of terminology. So where today you might see in the US someone very far away being called by a lot of stations that you can never copy the Fox, the DX, could be towards the next few months that there'll be improvements made in the protocol so that when the Fox is working 5 at a time, the signal levels will be much improved, maybe by somewhere over 10 dB. So that's kind of in the offing. You can probably see some of this, if you pay attention to the WSJT-X development aliases, or you talk to your local de-expeditioners, they may be clued in on some of that stuff or watching it, but that's in the offing. And if you're a de-expeditioner and you're thinking about using FT8 and whether you're using WSJT-X or MSHB, I have a little survey I'd love to let you fill out so that they'll help us choose our future directions in this regard. And it's more about operating conveniences for the people on the de-expedition, with some consideration of the folks who are trying to work them from home. But see me afterwards, and I'd love to get your contact information. I'll send you an email link, and I'd love your opinion.
Thank you, Brian. We'll go to Al and then Lucas.
I agree with Paul's comments and Brian's comments. When I go on an expedition, the rate is king. I don't have a specific target, but I want to work the most number of stations we can. And other than participating in a RIDI contest, it just slows us down. We can only work 60 or 70 an hour, something like that, where in any other mode, your rate goes way up. You can easily do 300 an hour or something like that. So, unless it's just for nostalgia, a lot of de-expeditions won't run RTTY, unless it's in a contest. So again, I think that rate is king. We want to get the most number of queues in our log, and we want to give modest stations an opportunity to get in our logs also by working more than 60 contacts per hour.
Thank you. Okay, Lucas.
Okay, just real quick, I just wanted to add, it's also, and we were talking about this last night, it's the great equalizer, and it allows younger hams, FDA I'm referring to, it allows younger hams, for example, to get in the log when they otherwise wouldn't be able to. So it kind of circles back to the very first question on how do we give younger hams a chance, and that's really part of it, in addition to rate, of course, and so on. As far as reading, I enjoy reading contests, but I think right now it's kind of the place for it, at least as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, first, I just wanted to give Brian a gigantic shout out. The changes he made to the code have generated probably an additional 100,000 QSOs in the past several DXpeditions. They used it on both H40 and H44. He was kind enough to share a version of it with us on TX5S. And for the first time ever, I saw what Foxhound could truly do as originally implemented or imagined by the designers, because he fixed some really critical bugs. And so we very regularly saw 10 call signs on each go-around, where we'd be giving RR73 to 5, and we'd be giving 5 new reports to 5. Very often we were seeing very, very close to the peak theoretical performance of 600 queues an hour. There is no mode on the planet that can do 600 queues an hour. Full stop. One other comment, just to tie in the RIDI and kind of the philosophy of how Perseverance does our expeditions. We give the teams on their shifts huge autonomy in what they decide to do. In fact, they have entire autonomy to decide for their 4-hour shift what they want to do. Some people choose to do RIDI that are RIDI fans, and so if you saw some RIDI from us, that was because Chris N6WM is a big RIDI fan. He got on, threw out a few cues, and if you were lucky enough to be there when he was there, you got one. The team that I was on, we made a rather radical decision to do a FT8 only session. So for 4 hours, all 5 of us did nothing but FT8. And I firmly believe that we made more contacts in that 4 hours than has ever been made in 4 hours on a DXpedition. We were right up at 5,000 QSOs in a 4-hour shift. Wow. So I want to throw that out to chew on of just what, not only the software running correctly, thanks to Brian, but then also the determination of the team to go ahead and, of course, many of us would have rather been on CW, or many would have rather been on phone, but we took it as a team and said, let's see what we can do. And it was a really interesting experience. And by the way, that 4 hours went by really fast.
In addition to what Steve said, it's very easy for a DXpedition operator to operate 2 computers, 2 radios, 2 bands, doing FT8 at the same time. Probably could even do 3. I know on Clipperton I did 2 radios, 2 bands a couple times, and on Tomoto almost every shift I was running 2 bands. In fact, one of the most fun shifts I had was running 10-meter FT8 to Europe with super strong signals, and then working you guys at home on 80 meters FT8. That was like wild. It's like, I've never done this at home. This is insane. Anyway, okay, but there was a question here. Yes.
Yeah, hi. I'm just wondering about WSJT-X, if there's any hope that it will ever be able to automatically detect the mode that the alleged Fox is using. I've had trouble sometimes distinguishing MSHV from Foxhound mode. I'm getting better at it, but is there any chance the software will just figure it out for me?
In the ideal world, there wouldn't be the need to really to have to understand that the DX is using one program versus another. And the reason why we're at this state that we are today is that when the program was released in an open source, so other people could do what they want with it, some people did and didn't follow some of the guidelines for how the protocol was supposed to work. So there were some changes made by some of these derivative apps, and you can look it up which ones they are and what the controversy is all about. But there are differences in the program operation that make it more difficult to universally understand how to best work the DX. And I'll just go that far. But if you really want to know how to work people using Foxhound, some rules that work universally are, if you are the hounds calling the DX or the Fox, call above 1,000 hertz.
There you go.
And you don't have to use Foxhound mode. You don't have to use Foxhound mode to call the Fox. You could just use plain old regular FT8 mode. You won't move down when you are called back by the Fox. But maybe you don't need that, but maybe you do want to be pulled out of the maelstrom of everyone calling to provide your report. And chances are you'll get through with your signal report if you do. But again, call above 1,000 and call with your grid. Those are the two things that will work with any of the two major programs that are used for Foxhound. And that will help increase your chances of success.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Okay, we've got 10 minutes left. We're going to go to Bruce and K3NQ.
Hey, Paul, thank you. Listen, I'm in agreement with the panel on the beauty and elegance of Foxhound. But lately, with some of the expeditions, one that's on the air right now, I've noticed during the day they're using human modes. At night, they seem to go complete to an MSHV, and it seems to be unattended MSHV. You can't do unattended Foxhound, you can do unattended MSHV, and I see them getting stuck in cycles where they don't hear, where the machine doesn't hear the report, and for the next 45 minutes they're giving reports to one station. I think that MSHV is a threat to the integrity of and the beauty of the original WSJT Foxhound. I'd love to hear comments.
I agree with Bruce. I loathe MSHV and robot mode. We first saw that with FT8 Whiskey, where initially, he was on the radio nearly 24 hours a day, and I thought, wow, that guy's an Iron Man. He must not go pee. And then we would see it get stuck, and it would be replied to someone for 47 times or something, and we soon realized it was in robot mode, which I've learned a lot more about. Does anybody want to chime in on their thoughts on MSHV? Bruce raised that question. Okay, we have another question from Rich, KE1B.
Hi, Rich, KE1B. I'm a director of the Northern California DX Foundation. We recently got a request that we were prepared to fund for the expedition to Scarborough Reef. Now, let me preface that Scarborough Reef has dubious sovereignty. It's claimed by China, it's claimed by Malaysia, it's claimed by the Philippines. This gentleman was a Filipino who had a very simple plan. He was just gonna take a boat, it's pretty close to the Philippines, he was gonna go run it aground on Scarborough Reef and operate. I say, that's a pretty great idea. That's a no-brainer. And then we're told by the DXCC desk that, if a Filipino operates from Scarborough, it's not Scarborough, it's the Philippines. If a Chinese operates from Scarborough, it's Scarborough, or a Malaysian, or Vietnamese, or anyone else. Now, I'm thinking to myself, I understand geography. If there's a guy on Scarborough, and I work Scarborough, and he confirms my contact to Scarborough, why the heck isn't that Scarborough? Because he's a Filipino.
I think you got it wrong. I'm sorry to say that. So it's not the operator that counts. It makes no difference where the country is from. But what happens, Scarborough Reef is very close to Filipino, and because of that, does not qualify. So the Filipino guy can go there if he operates with a Chinese call sign. Correct. Now, that's a different story. But to make it, according to the rules of the DXC, he just has to get the Chinese call sign, which most likely he's not going to get.
Right. So So, yeah, I fully understand the argument that he was going to operate with the Filipino call sign. That appears, at least to the public, that the ARRL is taking the position that the Filipino claim to sovereignty over Scarborough is a lesser claim than the Chinese or Malaysian or Vietnamese. I don't think the ARRL wants to go there.
Thank you, Rich. Anyone want to address that? Okay, there's a question.
Hi, I'm Hank, W6SX, and it's a question for you guys up there, but I'd be interested maybe if we have time for a raising of hands in the audience. What do you all think of the fact that for DXCC purposes, FT8 is punched in with RIDI? And to me, I think that dilutes things a bit, and I'd be interested in questions or comments.
Well, they're both digital modes. RIDI's more of kind of a slugfest. But does anyone want to answer that question for me? Okay, there was a question over here.
Yes, I'm on FT8 and addressing Brian and the development team. A lot of the expeditions have been operating on the standard FT8 frequencies. Is there any consideration to block that in the software?
So the question is, well, you heard the question. The DXpeditions do what DXpeditions do. Kind of a variation on the DX is, right? There are some folks who are operating in the standard FT8 bands using FT8 and sometimes doing something that looks like Foxhound. And your comment about, gosh, can't we do something in the program about not allowing stations to operate in those areas, say as a Fox? And the answer is, in WSJT-X, there specifically are blocks to not allow stations to open up, if you will, as a Fox on the standard frequencies. Some of the derivative applications don't have those restrictions. And so some people, as the DXpedition, set up on the standard frequencies and start going and make a mess sometimes of the band. And we do that, but some of the derivatives don't. I'm going to hand it over to Al because he can comment this as well.
That's a good point, Brian. If I set up as a Fox and I say I want to operate on 14074, I will get an error message that says, nope, sorry, I won't do it. You have to pick some other frequency, but that's only in WSJT and is not enforced by derivative programs. So I find it annoying and very disruptive to existing traffic that DXpeditions work on standard FT8 frequencies, and all it does is create congestion, in my opinion.
Okay, we have 3 minutes left. Any more questions from the audience? Anyone? Okay, right here.
I'm a rancher, I'm not a contester, but these guys have these expeditions at absolutely fabulous places. Is there any time I can talk to these guys regularly and see what the conditions are and stuff like that?
Well, we're on a DXpedition. I mean, you might catch us like tuning up and you know getting started on a particular band. Maybe if you're just camped out on one of our or the Maritime Mobile. But like we've said, we're kind of after rate, and we just want to be really busy and work a lot of folks.
If you'd asked me on Clipperton, what's it like, you would have gotten an answer. I would have said 2 words: it's hot, thanks.
another question?
Yeah, I'm W0AW. I keep hearing that it's all about rate. All about rate, it's the numbers, you gotta have the rate. If that's the case, then why not do away with sideband, CW, rate, and just wow, nothing but FT8. Although you might get a measurement of your funding, a measurement or feedback on the worth of your de-expedition based on funding.
You know, when you organize a de-expedition, there are certain expectations. You know, the foundations have certain expectations, the clubs have certain expectations. Then there's the special interests, you know, that want 6 meters or want SSTV or moon balance or whatever. And, you know, based on your team and their technical acumen, you can only do so much. Clipperton, in my view, I mean, we did everything. We were on 1296 and EME and just all sorts of wild stuff, but that's not the norm. Do you want to?
Oh, that's an easy answer.
Yeah.
I mean, the DXCC program has categories for phone, CW, and digital. And, you know, not only are we addressing rate, but we're addressing coverage of those band slots for those modes. So it's strictly in alignment with what our customer base would be interested in, and that's CW, phone, and digital. Simple as that.
Okay, with that, we're out of time. I want to thank our panel members. I want to thank the audience. Great questions. And again, you can get Lucas's book about DX engineering. It's really great. Thank you, everyone. Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you. That was fun.